This week, I attended a media briefing about the travel industry globally, and I thought what a perfect time to bring you some updates and some tips. Global travel is booming, but not to the US. A jet fuel crisis is threatening summer plans, safety abroad in the latest cases, and delay in the opening of Hyatt all-inclusive resorts in Jamaica. Let's dig in. I'm Lily, welcome back. This is Tourism Lens, where we talk all things conscious travel and tourism. So there's a lot happening in travel and tourism, and I'm gonna go through 4 or 5 of these things that you should know and things that I just wanted to sound off on. So first of all, I went to this media briefing at the Four Seasons in Georgetown with the head of the World Travel and Tourism Council, Gloria Guevara. She is heading this organization that represents the largest travel and tourism companies in the world, including 30% of members are from the US. So the Hiltons, the Marriotts, all the big guys, right? And they release their data and economic impact report every year, looking back at the last year of tourism. So the data for 2025 is quite stark. Global tourism is booming. It was the most profitable year for travel last year for more than 180 countries, except for the US. The US is losing its market share. It's still the number 1 tourism market in the world, but it is slowly losing its grip to China. It also saw a decrease in tourism spending in the country. Also, North America was the slowest growing region in the world. Asia was the fastest one. Africa is also showing healthy growth. Domestic travel in the US, however, remains very strong and increased just a little bit. So Americans are still traveling domestically. The real concern for Americans, from what I learned at the meeting, is that the China tourism economy is really robust and growing. They increased by 9.9%. So, and the spending of tourists there also has increased. By the way, Americans are part of that crowd going to China. Now, the interesting thing at the meeting is that there's a really interesting atmosphere. It was a very small group. We had the head of the WTTC. We also had the head of Chase Travel Policy. You know that Chase, the bank, is now in the travel space. And they were doing this presentation on travel in the US. 80% of the industry is made up of small businesses. Let's tell the positive stories about them, about a lot of the good things happening here internally. And the whole time I'm thinking, are we really gonna sit here and pretend that positive stories is going to make the perception problem that the United States has go away? Or are we going to be bold and brave and name what the problem is as a travel industry and say, we welcome everyone, we're inclusive. Politics is politics, but we want immigrant populations to come and visit us. We want everybody from all backgrounds and races, even if there are visa blocks and hurdles. So I had to make the comment because nobody was mentioning it. And I just thought, myself as an immigrant who came to the United States legally and just can't sit here and pretend that I don't know why people are not coming to the United States, as a person of color too. And so I had to mention it. And I said, I think we should all say why people are not coming here. People don't want to be part of a place where they're seeing on their screen regular people being brutalized, whether they're legal or not legal. And I looked around and everybody's nodding, and the 2 executives are agreeing with me and gave a response that really just tells me the US is just not ready to reckon with the reality that if you keep this up, your tourism industry is going to tank, the international part of it anyway. And they're having conversations behind closed doors. They're concerned, but it's all behind closed doors. So the consumer is not hearing that message. The international consumer is not seeing that. Anyway, for what it was worth, I said something because that's how I roll. I'm a journalist. But anyways, I think domestic tourism is probably going to boom even more within the United States this year. Not just because people are not coming here, but because of the whole jet fuel crisis. Now, I'm sure you've seen that in the news. A lot of the airlines are cutting back on their routes. Europe, if you're going there, some people had Bad Bunny concert tickets, from what I understand, to London on North Atlantic Airways, and those were canceled at the last minute. Some people, even though they were getting refunds, they chose to not go because they feel there's an uncertainty and it's safer to stay closer to home. So interesting, because I think that is going to happen more often. So part of why Europe in particular is in trouble is because the Strait of Hormuz carries 40% of Europe's jet fuel, and nothing has moved through there since the war with Iran. And so the head of the International Energy Agency said this week publicly that Europe has about 6 weeks to go, more or less, of jet fuel supply. and warned that there are possibly more flight cancellations coming along if supplies continue to be blocked by this war. The cost of fuel is also obviously skyrocketing, and people are seeing their flights canceled already. There are remedies to that you can take. For example, if you have an event that you're going to, you could book a second ticket on a comparative airline that is fully refundable. The US is less affected on jet fuel supply domestically because it produces oil, but prices will go up most likely. Of course, the summer travel season is around the corner, and we're going to see a lot of stuff happening if this war doesn't stop, worse than just fuel shortages. If you're flying a European airline, you already have your ticket or you're booking one, make sure you keep track to see what's happening with your flight. Also, you can use AirHelp, which is a platform that advocates for travelers on European carriers. It will tell you exactly what you're entitled to in terms of compensation if your flight is canceled or delayed because of the airline. While global travel is booming, the risks are also increasing. There have been a few cases in the news lately of Americans being murdered abroad and being caught in situations that any of us could be caught up in. One is Eric Fernando Gutierrez, who was an American Airlines flight attendant, had a layover in Medellin, Colombia, went out with colleagues for a drink in a nice neighborhood, by the way, and then unfortunately met with the wrong people in that place and somehow ended up murdered and found later on. They found Scopolamine in the co-worker as well, who was kind of disoriented and found later. That really hit me, you know why? Because I've heard of scopolamine before, except it's called Burundanga, and that's in the Dominican Republic. Yes, it's not just in Colombia, guys. Burundanga, there are cases if you want to even Google it, and some people have been subjected to it. Strangers walk up to you, whether it's in a supermarket or the metro, they ask you for directions, it all seems very innocent, they give you a piece of paper or whatever it is that they give you that you get in contact with. You don't just faint or pass out or anything either. It's some sort of hypnosis. And I know this because before the pandemic, we had a friend of a friend who it happened to, and I had never heard of it. Basically, she was approached by two strangers on the metro. They convinced her to tell them where her money was stashed, and she happened to have a stash at her house. And they made her go back to her house, get the money, come back, and then hand them the money and her phone, just like that. And then she didn't realize until way after when she regained consciousness, and she couldn't remember the whole thing, but she guessed that that was what had happened and that she had been hypnotized with this burundanga. In some cases, the doses are lethal or you have a reaction to it. And honestly, it's terrifying. The fact that this thing is spreading now is something to be very much aware of. Watch who you talk to, watch your drink, never leave it unattended. And I mean, really never. I mean, honestly, if I don't see you making my drink, I'm not even doing that anymore. And by the way, it's not about being in sketchy places. This happens in even very upscale areas. It's scary. So please be vigilant. Then there's the case of the 31-year-old Ashley Robinson. While she was on her birthday trip with her fiance, got engaged there, and then was found in her room. They were separated after a domestic dispute. The officials say that she committed suicide in Tanzania. The parents are not buying it. The reason I'm bringing this up is because it really is about not just safety and watching who you hang with, but also about the judicial system overseas. And that's something that I briefly alluded to when I was talking to you about living in the Dominican Republic. Now, I know that the judicial system is not perfect anywhere, including the US, but wherever you are, the point is that you need to be aware of what your rights are. You need to protect yourself. You need to declare your presence with whatever authorities of your country are in that place. You need to tell somebody where you are. If you have a domestic dispute with somebody you're traveling with and they separate you in your room, I really recommend you never open that door. You double down on it and block it. Travel with door stops. I travel with door stops. It's very hard to open a door when you have that thing stuck there. Also, stay on the phone with someone. If you have a best friend, a mom, someone who really cares about you at home, ask them, please stay up with me as much as you can, as late as you can. I remember a friend of mine did that for me when I was coming back. It was March 2020 and JFK was deserted. There were no cabs, when the pandemic was just starting. And she stayed with me to make sure I got to my hotel, and it was 1 a.m. or something. Just be careful out there. Last but not least, I want to talk about about Jamaica because there is news this week of the Hyatt hotels. The group of all-inclusive resorts will not now reopen until 2027. They were supposed to reopen in the fall. Now it's early 2027. That's another 6 months of unemployment for all of these hotel workers. I'm not sure what's happening to them. I certainly haven't seen any media reporting that is going around and interviewing hotel workers who were at these resorts. I'm not sure what's happening. Some of them may have restarted work at the properties that have reopened, but for the group of Hyatt hotels, which is thousands of workers, Hyatt Zilara, Hyatt Ziva, Dreams Rose Hall, Breathless Montego Bay, Secret St. James, Secrets Wild Orchid, Jewel Grand Montego Bay. I mean, these are like some of the most popular resorts there, or busy, I should say. And so if they're not reopening to 2027, I'm not sure what all those workers are doing. And instead in the media, you're seeing the Ministry of Tourism just touting the arrival numbers. I was there in December, and as you know, we had Michael here on our podcast, the ex-butler turned hotel union leader. So by the way, we should probably have him come here for an update maybe and tell us what's going on with the workers from Hyatt now that they have another full year of unemployment ahead of them and what is being done to help. If you would like to have Michael back on my podcast, then please leave a comment and then we'll share it with him. And then I can ask him whether he'll come back. By the way, if you're somebody who used to go to these Hyatt hotels all the time, just drop them a note and ask them what's happening to your workers. Are you taking care of them? We know we have rights as travelers and you can ask openly. So I just want to remind you that even though all these resorts are closed, please do not cross off Jamaica off your list. Go. It's a great time to experience the true authentic side of Jamaica, which is not behind closed walls, which is not cut off from local communities. Of course, you want to remain safe at the same time. So find the small hotels, find the Airbnbs that are Jamaican owned. Don't write off Jamaica and replace it with somewhere else. Remember that the climate crisis is something that has been hitting more and more destinations, and we can't just abandon them. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for sticking with me. Let's just remember that travel is never just about destinations and bucket lists. It's about who benefits, who gets protected, who's left behind. And if you want a wider lens on tourism, that is what I provide here. The joy, the resilience, and the responsibility. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye guys, lots to come.